Hi, I'm Hazel. It's Saturday again today, which makes it time to sit down and catch up on the WoW news of the week, what I've been up to, and answer some of your questions. Last weekend we had Blizzconline, which means that by now we've had more time to sort of sift and parse through not only the presentation, but the Q&A and the interviews that came out over the rest of the event. So, the big conversation that sparked from a question asked in the Q&A is that Blizzard revealed in that Q&A that there will be no more character customizations happening in Shadowlands. Not no more ever again, but it has been stated in no uncertain terms more than once now that there are no more character customizations coming in Shadowlands, which is a pretty big change from what a lot of people had kind of expected after hearing the pre-Shadowlands talks on the subject that kind of indicated that, you know, we have this whole big new framework. We're excited to add and continue adding customizations for launch and then also throughout Shadowlands. So this is what the answer in the Q&A looked like. It states very clearly in the first sentence that there's no more coming, and then the rest of the words just kind of add up to they want to do more customization in the future, but it's a big project and it's just not planned for Shadowlands. Ian later elaborated in this statement made to Polygon that effectively restates the same thing and says that they will do more, but like not in Shadowlands. So this kind of runs counter to some statements that we had last summer. I dug up this Polygon article that was released ahead of Shadowlands dropping. So this is from last July of 2020. And some of these statements from the article really do seem like they don't match up with what we're hearing now, which means at some point things changed, which does happen, things change. But as plan changes go, this one is certainly disappointing a lot of people. From what I've read on Twitter and on the forums, a lot of the disappointment is centered around allied races, with Nightborn being a very key example of races that have very few customizations, especially now compared to how many you have for like the base race such as the Night Elves. There have been some mixed messages about whether or not allied races were planned to get any customizations in Shadowlands. Originally at BlizzCon 2019 when they announced it, they were not talking about allied races at that time. And that was fairly clear, but that line got kind of muddied along the way, especially when Void Elves started getting a lot of the options that Blood Elves got, such as the skin tones, kind of on the tail of the whole High Elf thing. And then some allied races made out better than others, which kind of made the ones that didn't get anything feel like they were being left out, as opposed to the other ones just getting kind of looped in a little bit. And then, of course, statements like this did not help clarify things. One thing that comes to mind in this conversation is this dichotomy between we want transparency and we like these casual, developer talks where they share their insights and what they're working on, what they're excited about, versus, you said that this thing was coming back at this time in this post, or this person said it in this Q&A, and we're 2 years on, where is it, what happened? I feel like we kind of go back and forth between those depending on how badly we wanted the thing that was mentioned. And I don't know if this was the cause of the miscommunication, if you can call it that, but it feels like people sort of heard really promising sounding sentiments from these kind of more relaxed and casual presentations, and then latched onto them because they really wanted the thing that was being hoped for. And then when it doesn't pan out, or when the plans change, it feels like a betrayal because you had your heart set on this thing that they said they wanted to do and were working on, and then when they pivot and they don't finish it, it feels like they've promised you something that they've now decided they're not going to give you, and they can't give you a reasonable explanation for why. I think that this is definitely the downside of having more open and free and easy dev communication. Is it's unrealistic, I think, to have a lot of dev transparency and also have everything that we get from them hold true 100% of the time over time. And then you end up getting into these semantics arguments of like, well, why wouldn't they do it? And maybe they wouldn't do it because it's too hard, but look at how easy it is. And then it kind of devolves. Whereas if they had never said anything, then they wouldn't have given so much ammunition to that argument. But then also you get they're being very closed off and not transparent, and we expect more communication from developers these days, especially in games as a service type situations like this one. So I don't know what the right answer is. I just think that this issue is a symptom of the tension between wanting developer transparency and wanting everything they say to turn out to be true 100% of the time. I think it's very understandable that people are disappointed, and it would be really exciting if this was like backtracked at some point and they found a way to add some more customizations for those races during Shadowlands. I can't pretend to be super skin in the game invested, mostly just because I play a human, so I got a lot of customizations with the original Shadowlands updates. And then I tend to just the way that I play, which I know is not the way everybody plays, but when I'm looking at my character in the game, usually I'm looking at her head from behind, zoomed very far out from very far away, because I'm somebody that needs like a half an hour of warning if I'm going to dodge mechanics. So I play at a very high zoom and I don't see my character's face all that much, but I know for a lot of people, particularly role players, this is a really big deal. Moving on, got some 9.0.5 news, some of it newer than others, but a few of these things got buried for me last week, and now that they're implemented on the PTR, we can look at the UI for them. So one of them, the Great Vault raid requirement is being reduced. Instead of needing to kill 3 bosses for your first item, 7 for your second, and 10 for your third item, your third option rather, from the vault, it is being toned down to 3, 6, 9, and that is now reflected on the UI on the PTR. This should be really nice for people that are stuck on the last boss. I think it's not that uncommon to spend a couple of weeks progressing on Denathrius, and this change means that while you are 9 of 10, and you're still progressing, you're going to be getting an extra option of loot from your vault, which might be, I mean, it's a stretch to say it's enough to push you over the edge, but it won't hurt. Next raid tier is also a 10 boss raid, so I imagine that phenomenon will also hold true, and it'll be nice to have 3 options while you are progressing on the last boss. Also in 9.0.5, Torghast is getting some recommended item levels for layers. This is very nice because if you missed it, layer unlocks in normal Torghast are now account-wide, so if you have cleared layer 8 on your main, and you go to do some Torghast on your brand new fresh alt, you can jump into layer 8 if you want, but it's kind of scary and you're like looking at the UI wondering where a good point for you to jump in and start is, and it's not immediately clear. So what Blizzard has done here is added some item level recommendations. You can see them if you mouse over the layer number. I looked through these suggestions and I do find them to be a little bit high, but they're just recommendations. They are not requirements. You can queue for whatever level Torghast you want still. It's just kind of, if you're looking for a recommendation of a starting point based on your item level, that's what they've done here. I do think that having high recommendations makes them kind of, better safe than sorry, especially, given the different balance of different classes and different specs, and, maybe you get a run where you don't get very good powers, that kind of thing. This should be a fairly safe recommendation point. They are asking for 225 for Twisting Quarters 8. Item level 170 is recommended for Twisting Quarters 1. The standard wings of Torghast begin at item level 130 recommended for layer 1 and goes all the way up to 195 recommended for layer 8. Once again, not a requirement, just a recommendation, and heed at your own feeling. I recently did some Torghast on my fresh priest alt around item level like 150 or 160, and by that logic I should have been stuck around layers 4 or 5, but I was able to clear the 8 slowly, but I did get through it. A lot of your Torghast power is going to have to do with the powers and not so much your base gear, so you can do it under geared if you're confident and you play a class that is good at Torghast. We also got a very minor update to the Valor point system this week on the PTR with the addition of a Valor point materials vendor. So this is an NPC located near the Great Vault, and this is going to offer you some mats in exchange for Valor, basically just kind of as a stopgap for if you have nothing to spend your Valor on. As a reminder, Valor points are a currency coming in 9.0.5 that will let you upgrade your Mythic Plus gear, not PvP, not raid gear, just Mythic Plus gear. And you're going to get Valor from dungeons, but also from callings. You'll be getting Valor from your callings every day. So this vendor is really nice for somebody that does their callings, but never does Mythic Plus and has no need of Valor to upgrade the gear. You're going to be able to spend off that Valor to get yourself some lightless silk or Elysium ore or callous hides. 750 Valor will get you 20 silk or 20 ore or 10 heavy callous hides. It seems like a lot of Valor, but then again, it is just kind of a solution to stop you from overcapping, and it is PTR, so maybe values aren't final. Other tidbits that we got from interviews, kind of rapid fire, the one shoulder transmog plan that was data mined, and we got very excited, and then it never made it into the game. That was touched on in an interview, and it turns out that they did want to do it. It ran into some technical difficulties, particularly with asymmetrical shoulders that were never designed to be worn just one of. They'd still like to do it, but they're working on it. Another tidbit from the interview, there is definitely plans to introduce solo queue for island expeditions. No details on when. Not so much for Warfront. Supposedly technical issues there making that one difficult. Another one, they are considering WoD-style PvP gear scaling, keyword here being considering, but the general model for that would be PvP gear scaling up to a higher item level in PvP situations, so that it is the best thing to wear for PvP. That would be really nice, especially if you combined it with a lower base item level, but then a big jump, so that not only is it best to wear in PvP, but it is not best to wear in PvE, so people that want to PvE and they don't want to have to PvP don't feel like they need to go grind honor just to get gear. That would be nice, especially in combination with improved raid gearing, but I'm just adding a bunch of wish list items on top of this thing that they are potentially considering, but I think that PvP gear scaling is great. Anything that keeps the two more separate, fine by me. And then in an interview, Ian said that Legion raids should be soloable at the end of the expansion. He says they should be fairly easy by the end of Shadowlands, maybe not one-shots, but soloable. And this one kind of weirded me out. The 2 expansions old rule has been kind of floating around for a while. It's generally understood that we expect to be able to solo content after it is 2 expansions old. This is the first time I've ever heard of the expectation being at the end of the expansion. It's true that throughout an expansion we get fairly substantial power jumps, but this is the first time that I've ever heard that being posed as a requirement for soloing stuff that's 2 expansions old, and I feel like this is the first time that that's been true. And the way it's phrased here just makes it sound like it's a thing that's always been the case. Don't you remember? And no, I don't. And in my life this week, I have been stepping out just like a little bit, just like poking a toe out of my Mythic Plus comfort zone bubble in an effort to get more keys done, and more keys done of the ones that I haven't done very many of. I've discovered Raider.io. I know that it's very late in my life to be picking up on this, but I've finally decided to look it up and figure out what it is and what it means and what mine is. And I can never really resist a good leaderboard, so now I'm looking at it trying to figure out how to, like which keys I really need to do to get my score up, and I would really, really like to get Keystone Master done. And I think it's also, as much of a grind as the Pug Lottery can be, it's nice to play with different people to get a feel for how different groups do dungeons. My one complaint that I have about Mythic Plus pugging, though, is I would like to formally state for the record, I don't like it when people use just question marks in chat. It happens a lot, and to me at least, it comes across as incredibly hostile. Use your words. You know them. I know you know them. It's especially when because somebody dies to a mechanic and then somebody else hits them with the 4 question marks, and that would be one thing, but then inevitably 10 minutes later the question mark is gonna die to something else, and at that point it's like, oh no, my dog got in the way, and that's supposed to be totally understandable. You can't have it both ways. As a side note, if you're also like me and you're working on your Keystone Master and you're feeling a little stressed about how much time you have to get it done, I would keep working on it, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. We don't know exactly how long the season's going to end, but it's not ending until 9.1 comes out, and 9.1 does not seem to be around the corner. It would be shocking to me if we had less than 2 months, and it's possible that we have 3 or 4, or even 5. I would guess 3 or 4 months left, which is plenty of time. So keep plugging away at it, but don't stress yourself out about the end of times just yet. That brings us to questions from this week. Pyrofusion Dancer wants to know, when, in your experience, is the best time in an expansion to look to buy pets, especially TCG pets? So for most pets, waiting longer is better because there's a limited demand for pets. Most pet collectors want one of a new pet, and then once they have it, they're not in demand for any more. So as time goes on, the people that wanted them get them, demand goes down, price goes down. However, for trading card game pets, the supply has been cut off. There are no more being generated. The trading card game is out of print. There are as many in the world now as there are ever going to be, so generally those will just get more expensive by the day, and earlier is better. and time traveling back 5 years would be better than that. If you're on the fence about a particular pet, what I would do is I would look it up on the Undermine journal so that you can see the price history and see if there's any kind of seasonality to the price.
Most pets are going to start out expensive and then have the price fall and fall and fall as more people get them and they continue being generated. And then when the expansion flips over and people stop creating as many of them because they're not doing the content anymore, the price might recover a little bit, but not all that much because most of the people that wanted one already got one. An example of this would probably be the Larian Cub. Right now the pet was selling fairly well because it comes from Ascended Paragon caches, which means there weren't that many of them in circulation yet, and it's a very cute pet and people needed them. But because it appears to be a pretty high drop rate from that Paragon cache, lots of people are getting multiples of them in their first, second, third cache. I am predicting that price is going to drop pretty steeply and continue dropping, level out, halfway through.
Sydney wants to know, is flying going to be unlocked account-wide? The way it was worded implied that it wouldn't be. It would be different from everything previous. Yes, it is going to be account-wide, and it will be usable as low as level 50, so you are going to be able to use flying once you've unlocked it to help you level your additional characters, which I'm very much looking forward to. And that has been my week. Thank you very much for watching. If you have a question you would like me to answer in a news video, please leave it in the comments of the most recent one. Thanks very much, guys, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.